to everyone. Yeah, just to say we are going to record this session and we'll also share the slides afterwards. Usual practice. So, yeah, a really warm welcome to everyone. It seems like we've got a really international audience for this session, which is fantastic. And the session is a kind of a collaboration between IFLA, the International Federation of Library Associations, and IATUL, the International Association of University Libraries. And we basically split the session into two halves. At the beginning, I'm going to talk about one of IFLA's initiatives to create a kind of entry point into um, AI for libraries. And the second half is more about an exhibition that's been developed for libraries to um, inform their readers about AI. So we're going to split the session into two halves with questions at the end of the first half and then questions at the end. Now let me share, I've got a few slides here. Um, Hopefully you can see those slides. And as I say, the session is split into two halves. Sorry about the beeping, if you can hear beeping. I think it's people joining the session, which is it's wonderful that so many people are coming along. So I'm going to say a little bit about this entry point document that we developed, and probably a lot more interestingly, Madeline's Ning from St Paul Libraries is going to explain a little bit about how they've used it in practice. I think there's a lot interesting learning to come from their experiences. And the second half, Maria, Alana, and Vicky are going to talk about this AI literacy initiatives that IFLA and IATUL are working on together. Just so I'm Andrew Cox. I'm a lecturer at the School of Information, Journalism and Communication at Sheffield in the UK. That's not really that important. The key thing is I'm representing the special interest group of IFLA on artificial intelligence. I've got a few slides here about the SIG. I'm not going to go into them in great detail. You can look at them later. It describes a few of the things we got involved with. And you might want to join our mailing list, which kind of where we post new resources about AI. But the main focus here is the IFLA entry point, which is an annex to IFLA's Internet Manifesto, and it was published in the middle of last year. And the idea of this document is really to help libraries promote a more balanced discussion about AI and libraries. We know there's lots of hype about AI in general. We know there's a lot of anxiety around the potential impact on our jobs and our work, our concerns about the ethics of AI, such as its impact on sustainability, the power of big tech companies. It's a very controversial topic, but one that's a little bit hard to avoid because it's such an important strategic priority for most of the institutions that our libraries are embedded in and our countries. Nearly every country in the world has an AI strategy. So the entry point is like an intro to these issues that can be used to promote discussion. So it's really in three parts. There's kind of overview of how library can have a role in AI, and particularly the kinds of uses that libraries can make of it. Then it's got a set of 14 questions, and I suppose that is the core of the document. It's like 14 questions to debate about any AI initiative or application. And then we've got three scenarios that prompt further debate with sort of, again, uh, framing how AI might be encountered in very obvious situations in a library. So the first part is about how libraries might have a really important role in AI. And it's not just about, obviously, it's about developing or licensing AI tools, if you want, for library services. Obviously, it's about maybe contributing to the development and training of AI in the public sphere. It might be about advising library users about choosing soft, appropriate, responsible AI services uh, out there, which are developing very rapidly. Obviously, it could also be about promoting AI literacy within you know, the work we already do in kind of digital literacy, and also can have an impact on the wider institution within which the library sits, such as, for your university library, um, there should be some involvement in the wider policies and initiatives within the institution. And I think there's a wider societal role in kind of advocating for and maybe demonstrating responsible uses of AI in society. More specifically, there are lots of ways that AI could be used in a library context. And again, for those joining, sorry about the beeping. If you can hear beeping, it's people just joining the session. Um, yeah, so there's many ways that libraries can actually use AI. It might be in recommendation. It could be to support just the use of these generative AI chatbots and large language models. It could be licensing AI services. It could be using it to enhance access to library collections through creating metadata at scale, or maybe just individual item uh, uh, metadata creation. It could be a library chatbot. It could be an organizational chatbot inputting to the development of that and use of that. It could be these retrieval augmented generation applications, which are more selecting a narrow body of reliable resources and building AI, generative AI out of that. Could be training, providing data to train models. And it can be using generative AI to just accomplish professional tasks like summarizing texts or minutes of meetings. There's so many uses of AI. It's quite bewildering and hard to understand. And I think that's one of the big sort of strategic challenges of AI. How do we make sense of all these possible uses? So the core of our entry point is these 14 questions that build on uh, a statement about how AI could be used to prompt us to think more specifically about the types of controversies that exist around AI. I won't go through all of them, but there are things like this very first one is one of the key ones. It's like, well, what are the benefits? We know there's loads of hype around AI. What is the actual um, relative effort of introducing an AI application? What's the cost? Is it justified in relation to other priorities? Are there simpler solutions to delivering the same service? So why are we using AI? Trying to think beyond just doing it because it's hype. Second question, again, is one of the key questions that we all probably have as professionals about AI. It's like the level of accuracy, the timeliness and impartiality, the lack of bias in the information that AI provides. We know there are lots of issues around generative AI with this, but it's actually a generic problem with AI as a whole. So that's just some of the questions. Um, Here on this slide, to talk about, just summarize some of the other questions. And these may be, as we go through them, they perhaps become more philosophical and societal. So number 11 is about how do we make sure that our users retain agency in their interactions with AI? What the skills do they need? how can they ensure that, say, they're in a learning context, they're actually choosing to use AI in ways that benefit them. And then we also think about the human impacts, such as on employment and kind of things like the environmental impact and the what's the business model behind some of these AI applications that might influence whether we want to adopt them or not. So that's kind of um, a big part of the entry point is the set of 14 questions. And then the third aspect is these scenarios. So we've got 3 scenarios there where you can, which are kind of focuses for a discussion, maybe within a library service about how staff feel about AI. So one is, how do we support users already kind of using AI to use generative AI in a responsible way? What about our own use? That's in scenario 2. And scenario 3 is more about the specific case, and it seems like a very critical one. It's like, what are the issues around creating metadata using AI? There's also a link to some other scenarios. So that in essence is the document. It's intended as a framework within which AI can be debated within an organisation. Before I hand over to Madeline, just a couple of other things. There is another document that we produce, it's like about in the SIG, which is about developing a kind of more strategic response to AI. And it sort of talks about things like, well, why is AI a very hard strategic challenge? But also comes up with a set of tactics that can be kind of organized into a roadmap for a kind of emergent strategy towards AI. So the SIG has tried to provide some of these tools that libraries can use. I'm going to stop sharing there, and hopefully that was a useful introduction to the entry point. Now, much more interestingly, Madeline's going to talk a little bit about how her library service has developed its response to AI, and in particular, how it's used the entry point. So over to you, Madeline.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Just want to make sure that my audio, my visual is working well before I ramble on. Yeah. So yeah.
It's working.
Great, thank you, thank you. So a very good morning, afternoon, evening to everyone. I'm from Singapore, so it's nice to meet a really diverse group of folks here, and to also be sharing and learning right together, especially in this very evolving field of AI. So thank you once again for this invitation, Andrew and the team, and we're very glad to be able to share a short presentation highlighting how libraries can actually bridge technical, ethical, and social dimensions of AI at especially in the National University of Singapore. So our case study is built collaboratively with my colleagues. I'm not alone. I have my colleagues here as well across the libraries, and we acknowledge this contribution. What I'm going to share here are actually contributions from faculty partners, cross-departmental collaborators. And I must say, the entry point document by your team, Andrew, really guides a lot of our reflections on how we activate AI in practice. So largely what I'm going to talk about in this 10 minutes, quickly, 3 key areas. First, NUS Library's evolving role in AI literacy. And of course, the relevance of this document to us back home. And lastly, some of the learnings and challenges that we face as well. So deep diving into this at NUS Libraries, this is how we begin to situate our work, right, within a broader AI ecosystem. And it all starts from at the national level, coming down into the institution and to our particular department and unit at the libraries. And in Singapore, thanks, Andrew, for also sharing this diffusion report from Microsoft. And this is a very recent report in 2025 as well. Singapore is also recognized as one of the leaders, first movers in AI readiness, right? Because of its early investment in infrastructure and also scaling. So with this context, it also shows why universities are actually embedding AI literacy, not just as an add-on, but as also one of our foundational pillars And libraries contribute by aligning with this national priorities on digital competencies for us to achieve as a nation. So NUS is positioning ourselves as an AI research powerhouse, and it is already deeply embedded across disciplines, not limited only in computer science. And at the same time, safeguarding, of course, the academic integrity as well as original thoughts remains very essential for us as researchers, educators, and librarians. So our teaching philosophy largely focuses on nurturing human-centric AI-proof qualities such as critical thinking. So as you can see, the multiple examples I'm going to follow in the next few slides will show some of the glimpses of what we meant by that. And back in NUS, we also adopt a whole university AI strategy approach, largely in two key pillars here. You can see the first one, use AI, integrating AI into teaching, assessment, and learning support. And the second one, which is X plus AI, and this is embedding AI literacy into every discipline. And this ensures that all our graduates, not just technologists, can engage with AI responsibly. And of course, I must say AI literacy is not siloed, requires a lot of alignment across different disciplines, offices, and in our case, libraries, offices, and teaching and research units. So messaging on responsible use must be consistent across the university as well. And hence, this is a concerted effort across key stakeholders. So who is in this multi-stakeholder ecosystem, right? And our partnership spans across our IT departments, our Center for Teaching and Learning Technologies Center, our student conduct officers, as well as governance bodies within the university ecosystem. And some of the work areas includes equipping our students, supporting faculty and researchers, and overseeing enterprise tools. So this diagram here actually illustrates some of the key roles in the institution, the different units, what kind of roles we play. And I think something that stood out across this journey for the libraries is alignment of shared goal. It was very important for us because we have also a common shared goal as a university, and hence the department actually, as a library, do fulfill those shared goals as a team, right? So we do get ourselves involved in policy guidelines, in programming, and also sustained engagement, not just on communication. So this is a glimpse of what we do, as well as, how do we educate our students. And I think many of us in this audience here, we know that current research shows high adoption of Gen AI tools, right? But there's also studies talking about low cognitive transformation. So this is a critical gap, right? So how do we address this? We do a lot of workshops, also addressing some of the concerns, including memory retention, critical thinking, over-reliance on AI tools. So this sort of also concepts are being taught to our students and to bring that awareness. So I believe libraries here play a role in guiding learners to develop deeper cognitive engagement with AI. So another thing that we do a lot is the one source of truth, right? So we do have our library guides that consolidates policies, citation practices, safe use guidance for our students. So this is like a one source of truth for our students to go to, our faculty members, as well as a reference. AI-related academic integrity matters are also listed here in our LEAP guide. So this is designed for better clarity, accessibility, especially for students having their academic work ongoing. So another campaign that we do is also on AI infographics. So, I mean, once the slide is being circulated, you can actually refer to the link. We do this in partnership with also our AI working group on site in NUS, as well as the Office of Student Conduct. What this initiative aims to gather is to simplify policy for students using visual communication. So in a manner where students are better able to understand and find the relevance in their day-to-day work. So this is a glimpse of how it looks like. You can actually search on our LEAP guides some of these infographics, and actually we work very closely with our marketing and comms internally with library team. So some other campaigns that target students' understanding and translation of the policy into everyday academic behavior. This is one of an example. So we not only focus on the communication, which is just one way, but engagement is very critical to us, which includes roadshows, social campaigns, video touch points that align with our students' life. So quickly, the last bit of the first segment here, we do have a cross team. I think earlier on, Andrew showed the document, and this is something, some of the tactics, things that you can do. And we do have a cross team and innovation matrix within the libraries to evaluate emerging AI tools. And the assessment covers functionality, accuracy, search relevance, and so on and so forth. And we are responsible to look at how this adoption and safeguards are actually being mitigated, right, at the institutional risk level. So moving on to the second part, how this actually reflects how we look at the practices that we have and how this document actually helps us to look at and activate some of these issues that we face day to day. I think entry point also bridges a gap highlighted in some of these recent papers here, as you see on the screen. Some recent research covers three of these, possible gaps: institutional implementation of our AI literacy, professional skills among librarians, and also lastly on technical knowledge for effective AI decision making. So these gaps are actually well informed, right? Why the entry point serves as a very good and critical document for us to refer to. And this can also help us to identify opportunities that library has or not thought about, right? In the areas that we do or not cover. More examples, especially at the first developing or licensing AI for library services here, we actually have a multidisciplinary team behind the development, licensing, evaluation, and governance. So it's really literally a cut across, right? A whole library effort, not limited to only our tech people, right, in the team. And this reinforces that transparency and also breadth of contribution is very critical. And in 3, 4, 5, and 6, as I've mentioned earlier, these are actually things that we have to actually cut across many of these points here. So lastly, my last bit on learnings and challenges, of course, people. So this is something that we do find a very challenging task at the very onset of many of the AI introduction initiatives and efforts that we want to work on. So we have to manage staff mindset. So change management involvement is very critical here. And of course, scaling the competencies, this is something that the management also have to pay intentional notice on and how to also equip our people. Second bucket will be actually resource-wise, right? These are very practical challenges, resource constraints such as developing human expertise with effective training, right? For example, and also infrastructure readiness, finance, okay? And the last bucket will be managing the risk, where it's actually present at every level implementation-wise. So adapting the tool or even, trying to implement some tools in your own institutional context that has to be taken care of. So I believe AI adoption is both technical and also cultural, context-based. So this is something that we learn along the way as well. So ending off, I think at libraries, at NUS especially, what has worked for us is also exploring the learning aspect of the AI alongside our AI literacy programs. This allows us to largely mitigate the learning risks as students increase seeking information using AI. I mean, we can't stop them, right? And there is also a risk of eroding their critical thinking and learning. And so this is a course that we put together as a library to ensure that we also equip our students and bring awareness on the learning. And we have been activating this a lot more in the past 1 year. And we are seeing very good feedback based on number of students sign up, and especially the upcoming workshop that's happening coming next week on learning to learn with the AI. And I've actually managed to invite one student to co-conduct the session together with me on looking at how AI impact or not your critical thinking skills. So, and with that, I'd like to share this way forward for us as libraries. I think we are at this very central, position, right, to AI literacy, bridging the different key stakeholders, priorities, strategies, and especially the ground implementation And that's definitely anchored in the values, literacy, and partnerships that we have as an institution. And with this, I'll pass the time back to Andrew. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. It was a very, very interesting talk. I've really liked particularly the idea of like students' involvement in that course. It sounds great. Um, we've got one question already come in, and that is from Lisa saying, while teaching, we always learn something ourselves. What has been the most interesting journey for your team during this journey? I guess there's a question for you, Madeline.
Wow, this is a very tough question because there was there's so many factors that affect, but one most interesting learning for our team, it's that inertia of barrier to wanting to get something new and being implemented. I think the fear and anxiety is real. So I believe how we tackle it back home is yeah, don't do it alone. So go as a team and equip ourselves with collective wisdom and training together. I think that's something we started off by doing that. Yeah. And I've also questioned from different from a different spectrum of people as well, right? To say, what if people do not want to get on board? So for me, personally, 80-20 rule, right? So we need that critical mass, and so long as we can build things and develop together, I think that helps to smoothen things out as well. Yeah.
While other people are thinking of questions, I've got a question as well, maybe for Madeline. It's about how are students actually using AI, do you think? I mean, you must have a quite a good sense of how your students' behaviors changed.
Yeah, thanks for that question. The beauty of being in the libraries, we get exposed and we talk to many different kinds of students and from various disciplines. And interestingly, I do see students, of course, writing is definitely one of those. And they tried venturing into information seeking, right? Looking for information. Uh, but what we are observing also, they can be very critical about it, and this is where the opportunity, strikes us because it's like, hey, this result, this record, this quality of results is not good, right? And that was the opportunity for us to strike the conversation with students. And that is actually something that, yeah, we are observing students also being very critical in terms of the quality and output from many of the AI tools. So they ask good questions, and I'm the lesson that I'm going to be working on the workshop next week is one one opportunity and for me to get student to be able to be the mouthpiece, right? How are they actually critically using these AI tools for better, for worse? Okay, yeah.
That's pretty positive that students are a bit skeptical about. Yeah, that's really good. I'm still waiting for other questions, but maybe I'll ask another one. And it's about you've got a big focus on collaboration there. Do you think what's the message there about how to collaborate with other parts of the institution? That seems to be so important, doesn't it?
Yes, totally on that. I think at the very onset, when we were flooded with ChatGPT, we as a library know that we cannot be on this journey alone because there were so many uncertainties, and especially from a technology perspective, we are definitely not the expert. So therefore, I think that synergy and wanting to have that collective effort, we started small. So we actually talked to the IT department, the research office, and whoever is keen to start that conversation. Yeah, we started small. So yeah, that partnership is growing more and more important. And now we actually have a formal working group, and our university librarian, Natalie, actually is part of that working group, right? And that's where we have alignment together as a team, how to work this out as an institution. Yeah.
Great. There's a question here from Chipper. It says, what is your take on AI used to extract citations? Does the literacy course cover that aspect?
Yes, so this is also part of that critical thinking aspect for the course, right? For the various embedded information literacy program that we have. Typically, the students will churn out a list of citation, and that's where they have to evaluate. Yeah, so that's also something important because this sets another opportunity for us to compare what hybrid searching is, using academic databases, the kind of quality citations and references that they can pull out from. I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
That's great. And I'm sure you'll be open to other questions they can send you directly. Um, Maybe we should move on to the second part of the session, and ask Maria if she'd like to share her slides and kick off our second half.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, give me just a second. Let me try to share my presentation. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, perfect. Well, also, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining. And so, as you can see, my name is Maria de Brastefer, and I work for IFLA as a Digital Affairs Policy and Research Officer. And well, I'm here to present and to build on what my previous colleagues already said, on the wonderful examples that Magdalene already shared with us, as well as Andrew. And so I also want to talk about, yes, this challenge in bridging the social and technical aspects of the use of AI. And in particularly today, I would like to share the stories of some of the things we found out through one of the media literacy projects that we had during the course of the last 18 months, which is called the Milser Project, or also known by Supercharged by AI. Perhaps you've heard about it. But yeah, so what I will tell you is tell you a little bit more about what we found out about these gaps via the project results, and also some of the hints we got at what are some of the possible ways that we can use to address them. And so, well, I will not go too much into detail about the project because it is my colleagues from IATUL and the next presentation who are going to tell you a little bit more about how the project was actually implemented in their country. But just to give you a brief overview of the project, so the name was MILSER stands for Media and Information Literacy for Societal Resilience. And Supercharged by AI was the name of the exhibition that was created by the project. And that was also accompanied by a series of workshops and resources. And well, as you can see on the slides, the main objective was to increase the resilience of local communities in Europe in themes related to AI, which are the themes that you can see on the slides. And just to mention, these themes were not themes that were chosen at random, but they were themes that came up from a series of scoping sessions that we had with some libraries, where they identified these were some of the most relevant things for them and their communities in terms of AI. And so, of course, those were also the main objectives of the project. And this is a project that, as I mentioned, ran through 18 months across 10 countries in Europe. And something that I also want to mention that I think is important is, of course, we wanted to monitor the results of the project, and we did this in two ways. So in one way, we wanted to know what was the experience of the libraries that were implementing the project in their countries and the facilitators. And on another hand, we wanted to know what was the experience of the visitors and the attendees of the exhibition. And so with the libraries, we did a series of monitoring surveys and interviews. And with the participants, we did a baseline survey and a follow-up survey to understand a little bit more about what their knowledge was and what they learned from it. And so, well, also to tell you a little bit more. So as you can see, the target was to organize 50 events. And in the end, we were lucky because we exceeded the target. We ended up hosting 63 exhibitions and having over 30,000 visitors. And even though the workshops were not a mandatory part of the project, I guess you can imagine why a lot of people wanted to also implement the workshops along with the exhibition, because they were a really good complement to solidify the knowledge of what people had already experienced through the exhibition. And as you can also see in the slides, there was also the average age group of the participants. And so you can see there that in this case, the age group was, quite young, less than 18 on average, because even though the libraries that participated in the project were quite diverse, a lot of them were university or school libraries in this case. So that's why we had a lot of people around that age. But as you can see, we also had a lot of a fair share of adults participating in the project. So that also was, very enriching and added a lot to the conversation. And below, I put some sample questions of some of the things we asked to the visitors and participants to understand what they had learned. And so as you can see, we asked some questions to rate their familiarity, for example, with text-to-image AI models, but perhaps also some of the preconceived ideas that maybe they already have about how AI works in regard to certain things. For example, in here you can see the one that talks about political choices, and I didn't put everything on the slides for the sake of time, but if you're curious, I would invite you to look at the report, because in there we explain more in detail what we obtained from each of these questions. And so now we'll just for fun also sharing some photos. As you can see in here, there's some photos from the Ukrainian, the Croatian, and the exhibition in the UK. And also in the lower left corner, we have a photo from the exhibition from Ivory Coast, which was interesting because even though Ivory Coast was not originally part of the initial projects that participated in the exhibition, they were one of the first ones who requested the materials when the project closed. So it was very interesting for us how these resources and content played out in another context that was not in Europe. And so now for the main question. So where's the gap? What did we observe? What did we learn? And so we did realize the problem was the fact that, a lot of people have been learning this type of social and technical training on AI in sequence and not in parallel. So even though both types of knowledge, we know they're complementary, and through the observations we had, we noticed that there is no necessarily a natural order as to which should be taught first. But in an ideal scenario, I think they should happen in parallel, at least in the early stages of the learning process. And so we realized that it is very useful when technical concepts are always grounded in, social and local realities of the people and understood by real world experiences. And at the same time, the ethical and social concerns without technical knowledge, sometimes they might seem too abstract or maybe inaccessible to people, and also sometimes create the illusion that this type of learning is only for people who are experts in certain area. And so this is not to say that after we observe, we don't recommend providing trainings that are about specific technical or social skills. But we did realize that in this case, at least, what worked best is that when these trainings were part of a more holistic process, like perhaps a series of sessions or workshops, webinars, something that somehow gives continuity to the learning process and that leaves some space to integrate both perspectives. Another thing we noticed was there was sometimes a lack of a multidisciplinary approach from the start, and so we realized that we shouldn't be afraid in this case to mix people from different backgrounds. Of course, this doesn't come without a challenge because everyone has different levels of expertise, experience. And in this case, sometimes it was also challenging because a lot of the participants, as I said, had a very different age range than the adults who joined the workshops. But even having that in mind, there were a lot of facilitators who decided to have mixed groups, and this brought a lot of it was really positive for the audiences. And so we always recommend to not underestimate what people can learn from the content that you're giving them, but also what they can learn perhaps from each other during the trainings. And of course, with this also comes unequal access to the trainings and related content. So realizing that not all the participants or not all the people who are participating in this capacity building process have equal access to trainings outside of the training that they're currently receiving. And so it's also a responsibility of the people who are providing the trainings to see how to provide that continuity after that session. In this case, we also saw sometimes there was a lot of prioritizing of skills versus outcome-based learning. And this was very important also, especially in this case when it comes to AI, because we realized that sometimes, well, as I previously mentioned, the technical training can become a bit too abstract. And we realized it worked best, and not only with the students, but also with the adults that joined this session to do trainings that were oriented towards a specific outcome, even if the content of the session was shorter or the materials were less. We realized in the end, well, simple is better when it comes to AI at least. And we also realized, well, that there was a problem of perhaps not learning enough beyond generative tools. So in this case, most of the students and most of the people who attended the trainings had enough, well, had at least enough working knowledge of how to use generative tools, but because they lacked some knowledge about the overall broader AI landscape, it was also sometimes harder for them to grasp what would be the ethical implications of using AI in certain contexts. So it's also something that we realized it can, was very useful to teach. And now just to, well, tell you a little bit more about what we think helps towards closing the gap. What are some steps that we observed in the project that were useful? And so, of course, the counter strategy to learning not in parallel is to build shared knowledge and also language. We realize explaining in play language is quite useful, particularly when it comes to new terms, but that is also useful to co-define terms with the participants. So for example, with some words that are very common in the AI language, like bias or transparency, and we realize that it's not always good to assume that everyone knows what that means in the context of AI use. So instead of assuming, it's always good to take the time to agree on what those words mean for different types of people. And also, as I mentioned before, the mixed approaches and participants. So don't be afraid to mix technical and not technical communities, people with different backgrounds. And so we are aware this can be challenging, but and it doesn't have to happen all the time or for all the sessions, but there is a big value added in doing that. Another thing that was also very useful for us was to realize that, ethics in the theme of AI should be much more considered a practice and not necessarily a checklist that comes at the end. And I think this is also very related with what my colleague Andrew said and what is embedded in the entry point document. Because this is something that perhaps invites and encourages people to ask themselves certain questions when doing anything that is AI related. So for example, if someone could be harmed by the system, or what the kind of safeguards that people need to have in place if something goes wrong. And another thing was to ensure people can apply what they learn, which also comes very attached to the idea of the skills-based versus outcomes-based learning. So always have an outcome in mind when you're doing this kind of trainings. And of course, the long-term learning cycle and continuity is also very important. That is, one of the we believe that is one of the main things that makes them really useful for learning in the long term. So with this, I'm gonna finish the presentation, and I would also like to, first, thank you for joining this session, and also invite you to a webinar that we're also going to be holding next week. That is going to be not just on AI, but more focused on digital inclusion and how to make connections for those of you who do advocacy. So thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I go back to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Maria. A lot to digest there. A lot of really good insights on how to construct AI literacy training. So now over to Alana and Vicky to hear their perspective on the same project.
Hello, everybody. I'm Vicky Grant, and I'm presenting today with my colleague Alana Ross. We're presenting on behalf of IATUL. IATUL is the International Association of University Libraries, and together Alana and I run their special interest group for information literacy. So I'm an information literacy librarian at the University of Sheffield in the UK, and Alana is an associate director with responsibility for information literacy at the American University of Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates. So we were approached by Maria at IFLA in September 2024 with an invitation to take part in the Supercharged by AI exhibition. It was in its first phase at that stage, so it was for libraries within Europe, and so the offer to partner on the project was given to the special interest group, and because I was the only European-based member, I picked up the opportunity and organised the exhibition in 5 sites in the UK. And then following on from that, Alana and I worked together to pave the way for a global rollout. So today that's what we're going to talk about. Shall we move to the
Vicky,
next
just
slide?
the slides don't seem to be maximized.
Oh. Alana's driving the
Sorry,
slides.
1 second.
Okay, she's going to give it another go, I think.
Driving from my end. Sorry, everyone.
Yes, we can see them now.
Okay, are they in full screen?
That's it, full screen now, yeah.
Yes,
So if we
okay,
move
great.
to the next slide, Alana. Great. So yeah, this is what we're going to cover today. So Alana and I are going to talk about these global experiences of hosting the IFLA Supercharged by AI exhibition. And then we're just going to touch on an open educational resource that we're developing on behalf of IATUL for some global sharing. And we'll end with an invitation to join the IATUL SIG conversation. So I'm going to hand over to Alana now, who's going to give some background to the exhibition.
Thanks, Vicky. Hope everyone can hear me. Yeah, thanks. It's wonderful to have such a great response and so many international visitors here, and thanks for the invitation. I'm going to talk a little bit, or what we're going to talk about firstly is I'm going to give you some background to the exhibition itself. Now, I know that Maria has just reported on the outcomes of the project that was run, but the Supercharged by AI exhibition, it was run between 2023, 2025, a project led by consortium partners, so IFLA, the Tactical Technology Collective, and Politecnico de Milan's Density Design Lab. And it was funded by the European Media and Information Fund with the objective of developing impactful resources for public education suitable for both librarians and learners to interact, showcase, talk about different aspects of AI literacy. This is really a fantastic exhibition about the effects of AI on our online lives. And it was designed to spark conversations about the ethics, bias, and societal impact of AI to help make complex issues related to AI more tangible to visitors. So in this section of today's session, we are going to share some insight into our experience with rolling out the exhibition as partners in the project, but also internationally now that the main project has concluded. Okay, the exhibition itself, it's easy to produce. It's a large-scale display. It comprises 5 posters, 2 booklets, and a takeaway brochure that can be readily downloaded. And there is also some workshop material that people are free to adapt. The posters explore themes relating to scams, online harassment, stereotypes, and AI bias. also the AI-powered influence industry. And there are a number of really cool interactive elements that are included aimed at engaging users, gathering feedback, including, as you'll see in that image there with one of the posters. The exhibition requires 7 meters of hanging space, and there is a very useful setup manual that details requirements from printing through to spacing of the posters and hanging of the materials. And there are a number of ways that this can be done, from printed wall posters, portable poster boards, or easels. We're going to talk a little bit about how to access the files later on, but in this component of the presentation, we're going to share some first-hand experience, our experiences of hosting the exhibition, with hopefully some ideas that you can take away for bringing the same exhibition to your own spaces. I'll hand that over to Vicky.
Thank you, Alana. So, as I mentioned earlier, the IATUL involvement in the Supercharged exhibition started in the UK with exhibitions at the University Libraries of Sheffield, Leeds, Leicester, Birmingham and Bath. And these images, they show the exhibition in Sheffield. We first hosted in our Information Commons, which is our 24/7 student library, between December 2024 and January 2025. Next slide, please, Alana. So during this initial period, we didn't actually host any workshops or any events to accompany the exhibition. So I was actually quite pleasantly surprised when I came back from the winter break and saw so much engagement with the feedback poster. So this is one of the posters that's part of the exhibition, and we just used red dots for students to interact and give feedback. So it was really interesting to see how much they'd engaged. And then we went on to use the grant money that we got as part of the IFLA project to run a workshop at a later stage, and we actually employed some students to do that, and from that we were able to partner librarians and students together to further develop the Sheffield's AI literacy offer. Next slide, Alana, please. And then in December 2025 to the current period, so this is still live, we decided to run the exhibition again, but this time with the integration of more materials. So we actually worked with Andrew Cox and together decided to integrate some more material, perhaps a little bit more about the actual technical aspects of AI. So it included this cartography of AI, which you can see there to the right of the screen. And what that does is actually sort of explain to students how AI works. So it includes things like the generative AI tools, disassemble language, visual and textual language, to reassemble based on the calculation of probabilities. So it's actually like articulating how these large language models work. Next slide, please, Alana. And then we also, with Andrew, developed this interactive exercise with post-it notes to really engage students with their own perceptions of AI. So we prompted the students with this little prompt here, sitting in their room in halls. Alex is battling procrastination. It's time to get down to work. The deadline is looming. They call up their AI. So what happens next? And then the invitation for students to respond with a post-it note. And again, I'm always quite pleasantly surprised to see how the students do engage with these activities in the library. So if we just move through the slides, Alana, now we'll be able to see. I guess this is like a bottom line response. Does AI help the students? And it's quite interesting to see, right? The bottom line is Alex passes their assignment using this AI. But also reflections about one of the things that Andrew talked about earlier, the impact on employability. So this reflection that embedded programming has got, so this particular student reconsidering university and life choices. And then some philosophical responses. So as students say, an AI will not ruin you. Your brain is not that weak. And another sort of call for not allowing AI to do all the thinking. And then some reflection also about the environmental impact of AI. So this post-it note about how whole communities are being displaced. and a political response, vote green. And then finally, I always quite like to see a little bit of playfulness if we invite our students to interact with our exhibitions. So a little bit of playfulness as well there. Happy New Year, and good luck to everyone with finals. And then the final point I just want to mention about the Sheffield experience is that out of this exhibition, the team have worked together to develop a critical AI literacy tutorial. We used Articulate Rise software to create this, and what this is really doing is enabling us to embed critical AI literacy across every single programme in the university. So yeah, it's just positioned us really well, I think, to embed our work into the programme. So I'm going to hand back to Alana now, who's going to say something about the experiences of the exhibition at Sharjah.
Yeah, so Sharjah in the UAE. This was after the project had ended across Europe. So we were very lucky to be one of the first international libraries to get access to the files and engage with them. So here you can see how we actually hung our posters, 7 meters of space. And as you can see, the posters are quite large. I definitely recommend that you adhere to the print guidelines because the text is, there is a lot of text. It is quite dense, and visitors really do need to be able to interact with the exhibition. And this includes use of their mobile phones. One of the posters, which is Stories of Online Harassment, that first poster on the left. We had the posters printed professionally at no great cost, really. And we followed the setup manual. We did the hanging ourselves in a central, accessible location on the first floor of our library. This is an area that students pass through, accessing all first floor areas of the library, which is very busy space for us. We obviously moved a bit of furniture and seating around to accommodate small groups, with the intention of providing small group guided tours, which we felt was very important. Targeted promotion is vital as a means of introducing the exhibition, but also connecting users with the content. There is an introductory poster which explains the exhibition. We also used our website, library webpage, our Instagram account, digital signage within the library. And we also promoted the exhibition heavily with our faculty through various liaison outreach activities, because we were very keen for faculty to consider how the exhibition could tie in with any component of their teaching courses, and of course, very busy schedules. Here is some of students interacting. Success of the exhibition is dependent on sparking conversations about ethical and planning for its user. AWS, we ran a small guided tour during this involved training our staff and students. So these are the guided tours. Staff do need to be familiar with the content, and we need to be able to encourage user participation and be able to engage users in conversations. So really to spark those conversations about AI, their use, the implications of using AI, and the impact of AI on their online lives. And we felt that smaller groups work best when moving through the exhibition. And we would say 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes is required for each tour. Our greatest success was a library collaboration with one of our academic writing faculty members and 2 of her classes, following that very targeted outreach that we had done. Faculty need to see how this is relevant to what they're teaching and how it can be integrated into their busy teaching schedules. So following discussion with our faculty member, a library workshop was developed. We actually adapted, let's look at the materials that accompany the exhibition, and we decided to focus on AI bias, which is one of the exhibition themes. and we created our own workshop. So students, first of all, toured the exhibition, and then they engaged with a range of different case study readings on the topic of AI bias. And we had a lot of group analysis and guided discussion in the library session. We looked at different types of AI bias. It was really successful. All students were engaging, collaborating and participating. They really were participating in very interesting discussions. The faculty member was very impressed. And it then became, she was able then to use that as a foundation for a writing assignment that she took on after the library class. And she used reflection and multiple feedback stages to support students in developing their ideas and thinking more critically about AI bias and its implications. So this was a really successful outreach exercise for us in not only engaging students, but connecting with faculty and helping them to find ways to utilize the library and our resources to supplement and steer their instruction. We're now beginning to see the exhibition being rolled out across other international locations. And we'd really like to invite you to consider how you could do so as well. Towards the end of last semester, Durban University of Technology in South Africa hosted the exhibition. This is a photograph from their setup. And we've recently heard that Carnegie Mellon University in Qatar is planning to run the exhibition later this month. It's really exciting to hear about. In providing probably some final advice to anyone who is interested in hosting their own exhibition, timing is crucial, and impact will be enhanced by aligning with other campus events that are going on or discussions. For example, next week we have an AI week at campus level. Maybe you're launching a specific resource like an AI LibGuide or individual workshops. Try to connect the exhibition with something that you're doing or that's happening on campus. Promotion is very important, but so too from our side, we would definitely say the training and upskilling of staff so that they're confident and able to engage users on guided tours. And there are multiple ways that feedback can be gathered, as Vicky was showing you, an excellent and very simple way of those little post-it notes, responses to questions, pre and post survey experiences, and impacts on learning can be measured that way also. So the big thing you're all probably wanting to know about is how to access the learning materials, how to access those files. To host at your own exhibition. They are available for download from IATUL's new open educational resource, which is now just launched as a resource to share materials and content with a focus on critical AI literacy. So here is the QR code, and these slides will be shared later if you don't manage to capture that. Vicky's going to next talk about the OER that we've developed and how you can share your own materials with others. Vicky.
Thank you, Alana. I'll just pick up on some of the questions that have been asked in the chat, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just people asking about the suitability for other settings. So, I mean, Maria might want to come in on this, but absolutely, it wasn't developed with university libraries in mind. It's just that Alana and our institution is designed for university libraries, but it's very suitable for all sorts of settings, public libraries, school libraries, supporting medical and nursing students. And what you might want to do is just scaffold with some of your own resources. That's how we've made it really suitable for our own setting. But yeah, definitely IFLA developed it to be really broadly applicable. So I just wanted to end by telling you a little bit more about this open educational resource that we're developing. It's very new, so there's not many resources in there at the moment, but I've given you the link so you can link to all the exhibition materials if you do want to set up a supercharged exhibition in your own organisation. But this is the general link to the open educational resource, and what we really want to do is encourage everyone to use this, have a look at the resources that are there, see if you can modify them for your own setting, so that we can really build a community and information literacy librarians can come together and share. And then if we just look at the next slide, Alana, This is a link to the submission form, because I know there's been lots of really excellent work happening around the world, librarians developing critical AI literacy resources. So if you've got something like an online tutorial or a lesson plan, please do share it there, because I think we can really generate the power of libraries as spaces to support these critical conversations if we come together and work together and we share through an open educational resource. Did we just have we just had a final slide as well. So we just wanted to end by saying a little bit more about our IATUL Special Interest Group for Information Literacy. We've set up recently a community of practice. A lot of the interaction happens on LinkedIn, so it's just to let everybody know about that community of practice and just to encourage you to connect with us on LinkedIn, find out more about the work that we're doing. And on that note, I'll hand back to Andrew.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Vicky and Alana. You've actually answered the questions so far, which is great. I suppose I have a question about, so is the content of the exhibition, is it focused primarily towards kind of a critical perspective, or does it introduce basics AI skills as well? What I'm quite interested in that aspect.
I would say, well, I think it introduces, on one side, I would say it introduces basic skills on the topics of the exhibition, but perhaps are the workshops that go a little bit more in depth. So I don't know if we mentioned that, but the workshops are in two of the topics of the exhibition. I believe one of them is focused on online radicalization, and the other workshop, if I'm not mistaken, I think is more focused on synthetic information. And those workshops are a bit more in depth, and they also have a bit more materials that can also be adapted. But they have, for example, some examples, local examples, some resources like videos or stories of, so they're a bit also more interactive. And well, also something to mention is that that is currently not part of it, but that we would like to do. Recently, we had a conversation with some of the people who implemented the project, like Vicky and Alana did, and the other participants from the other countries. And well, a lot of people mentioned that they would like to have also more resources like the workshops to complement, perhaps on the other topics that were not touched upon, but any other topics. So that's something that we also want to currently look at, to see if people have suggestions of other topics that they would like us to explore as a complement, perhaps, of like a follow-up for the exhibition.
You mean other topics relating to AI or more other topics in general?
Either one of the topics that were included in the exhibition that was not covered by the workshops, or perhaps any other topic, AI related, anything in general that we could sort of link to this content.
Right. So are there any other questions that people want to post in the chat, or raise your hand? We can take other questions. I think Vicky and Alana have given and Maria have given a pretty comprehensive picture. And just to remind you that the recording and the slides from the session will be shared after the event. So I'm sure people would be happy to answer questions as they occur to you. May happen after we finish, but wondering if there's any other questions. I know we wanted to close the session. Maria has set up a question for you as an audience. It'd be great to hear your opinions. So we've got a Zoom question sort of lined up. It's popped up on the screen. So there it is. What feels important about connecting AI and technical understanding with ethical and social awareness? So I think often AI is like presented as primarily a technical question. I think what this session's all been about is about these wider issues. And what kind of resources, the question asks, would you like to see to bridge this sort of gap? So hopefully, Martin's asking a question about adapting the exhibition to particular settings, which seems, I think Vicky talked quite a lot about that, and we've heard.
Yeah, would you like me to respond, Andrew?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Martin. Yeah, so we've hosted, as I mentioned, the Supercharged exhibition twice now, and the second time we did more kind of incorporating local materials in, and I think that worked really well. But I think what's great about what IFLA's done is that they've created something to kind of give you a base to start from. But yeah, I think it does make sense to not particularly for IFLA to adapt the materials, but for us to do that, to bring some messages in. So in our exhibition space we have a digital screen, so we link to some of the institutional AI messages from there, and as I showed you, we had the post-it note exercise that was to engage students to think about this in a university setting. So yeah, I think it does make sense to adapt, but I think it's for local institutions to do that in a way that really speaks to their own audience.
Yeah, and it came out really clearly the need to, or the benefit of aligning to what else is going on in the institution.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and what Maria says is really important as well, that it's been translated into different languages. So it was really nice to connect with the other European countries in particular to see that they did that.
So people are still answering the question that we've posed in our poll. Hopefully we'll get a few more answers. And are there any last sort of questions for any of the speakers? Anyone want to raise anything or share any insights? Doesn't seem like at the moment we've answered all the questions about AI, which is wonderful. Who would have thought we could achieve that in an hour and a quarter? So that's very good. Of course, we will share the slides and the recording afterwards. Thanks for coming along. Thanks for answering the question. We'll stay with the session open while you kind of continue to ask, fill in the poll. And thanks to everybody who attended and for your questions and thoughts as well. So thank you so much.